Hey, Black Belt reads. First week of October is done. Happy Halloween, happy horror season. I've got a couple books here I read, taking it nice and easy. I have big plans, but they don't always come to fruition, right? So the first book I've actually finished for this horror season is 12 Nights at Rotter House. I love haunted house stories. That's like one of my favorite horror subgenres, and I've read so many of them, so it's hard to surprise me. This one did a pretty good job. It kept me on my toes the entire time. It's about a writer who wants to write a story about a haunted house, so he wants to stay in the house for 13 nights. So when the book first starts, he says, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to call the book 13 Nights at Rotter House. So right off the bat, you're like, oh, that's funny. That's cool because the actual book is 12 nights. So he's not going to make it the 13 nights, right? So that's a cool little twist. He's got permission from the homeowner to come into the house and stay for 2 weeks. And he doesn't believe in ghosts. He doesn't believe in any of that stuff. He's not scared to stay in this creepy old haunted house that, of course, he doesn't think is really haunted, right? So, but man, I don't believe in that stuff either, but I would be freaked out staying in an old creepy house, right? I'm sure everybody would. So, creepy things do start to happen to him. Noises, visions. He's got a friend that joins him in the house, and throughout the whole book, there's just this tension because an event is mentioned several times that him and his friend have had a falling out, and you don't know why. And of course, it's revealed. And I won't spoil the way the book ends, but it did keep me on my toes the whole time. You've got some pretty scary moments. You've got some questions the whole time you're reading it, whether it's real or not. And I think a lot of people would maybe be a little annoyed by the ending, but it didn't bother me. It was fine. It was fine. In hindsight, maybe it didn't really tie up all the loose ends, but overall, I really enjoyed the book. It was a good way to start the season. 12 Nights at Rotter House. So, the next one I've got here is a physical copy of Rosemary's Baby. Again, just like haunted houses, probably my favorite subgenre of horror is going to be possession, religious horror, like The Exorcist. The Exorcist is one of my favorite books of all time. So anything that can sort of scratch that itch is right up my alley. I have a weird fascination with the dark side of religion. And this is one that I had to get it off the list. I've wanted to read it forever. Finally got it. It's very, very short. It's a quick read. It's like 200 pages, but man, it reads so fast. It reads incredibly fast. And I think this is from the 1960s, 60s, maybe 70s. It reads very, very easily. You can just sit there and read it. I read this in 2 days. I couldn't put it down. It's just so good. It is a woman, Rosemary, and she's married to a handsome, up and coming actor. They move into a new apartment and want to have a baby. So Rosemary gets pregnant, and the whole time you're just trying to figure out if she is really crazy. What are these things happening? Is it true? Of course, a lot of you have probably seen the movie or have read this book or just know the story. But I tried to read this as if it's the first time ever reading it, not knowing what's going to happen. And I think if you do it that way, it really benefits the reading because you kind of don't know what's really going on a lot of the time. But I'm going to get into spoilers for this one just a little bit. It's such an old book. Everybody knows the premise of this, I think. So if you don't want to see the spoilers, just skip ahead a few minutes until the next thing pops up on the screen. But she seems to have been impregnated by a satanic cult, and they want to take her baby. That's what she thinks. And the whole time you don't really know if it's true or not. Man, the scene where she actually gets pregnant, um, that is one of the most horrific scenes ever written on paper. I mean, it's awful. She is drugged, but she takes just enough of the drug, sets it aside to where she doesn't get the full effect. So she kind of comes in and out of consciousness while this group of people surround her and they're naked and they're dancing in this satanic ritual. And, it's just supposed to be her and her husband alone in the apartment together. But whenever she's on the bed, she feels this huge, leathery, yellow eyed, demonic thing on top of her, raping her, basically. It's one of the most fucked up things I've ever read. It's straight from the movie. So if you've watched the movie, you know that scene. It's really, really gross and really, really effective in what it's trying to do. And, after that, you're like, yeah, this is clearly, you know, uh, anyway, yeah, the end of the book. I don't remember exactly how the movie ends. I haven't seen it in a long time, but yeah, it did not end the way I expected it to end. Right up until the last minute, I was like, you know, shocked in the way it ended. Really good book. I gave this 5 stars. Such a classic, so easy to read, such an iconic story. And if you have kids, then it'll hit you even harder because it's just, especially the ending. All right, I gotta stop talking about Rosemary's Babies. I've got a lot of stuff that I'm like in the middle of. I figured I might show it a little bit. I'll try not to make this a very long video. I read the first story in Strange Weather. The first one was about a haunted camera. It was pretty cool. It's called Snapshot. Take a picture and then odd things happen after the picture's taken. I'm trying not to spoil anything, but really good. There's 4 stories in here. That was just the first one. I'll keep on with this. I love Joe Hill. He's one of my favorite writers. Everything he's read is just so creative, and he's really got a lot of that creativity that his dad Stephen King has, but it's just done in a different way. I really appreciate it. I'm also about 100 pages or so into Hex. This one is going to be witches. So again, I won't spoil anything, won't talk about the story. Obviously, I'm not very far into it. But yeah, it's good so far. I didn't expect it to go where it's gone so far, and I'm very curious to see where it's going to end up. And yeah, this comes highly recommended by a lot of people, so picked it up, thought it would be good. Gonna have a haunted house, a demonic thing, maybe a witch, maybe a couple of short stories. So I got Joe Hill, and then of course my next short story collection I'm going through is Thomas Ligotti. This is much different than Joe Hill in that it's a much more challenging read. You got to really sit down and focus on this. It's not as entertaining. It's not as easily read as Joe Hill. I mean, I blazed through that first short story in one sitting. So easy. Loved it. This is much more difficult. You're kind of not given a lot. It's written beautifully. He's got a beautiful way of writing. Beautiful, flowing, elegant, but yet dark. And I think the first story in the collection is so far has been the best to me. I'm about 25% of the way through, so I've read like, 5, 6 of the short stories so far. The first one was really good. It really worked for me. None of them have quite hit that mark yet, but I got a lot to go, so hopefully I'll end up really positive with the book in the long run. And then the last one, that's, I try not to put too much on my plate, but because the last one is actually quite a thick boy. It's like 600 pages. Oh, it's only 500, but it's just very dense. I'm about 100 pages into this as well. It is Ghost Story. So a lot of people commented on my last horror video when I recommended Floating Dragon. Like, dude, how have you read Floating Dragon and not Ghost Story? I don't know. I know. I'm weird. I just pick random things up and read them. This is obviously Peter Straub's most iconic book, the one he's known for, the one everyone either seems to love or hate. So far, I really like it. Um, the prologue was very strange. I had no idea what was happening, but I feel like it'll all come along in the end. I mean, surely he's got a plan here, but really good so far. A lot of people say it's like one of the best horror novels ever. Some people say it's so boring they couldn't even finish it. I can usually do pretty well with boring novels. Boring in that it's slow and you know, I like a slow burn. I do. So that doesn't bother me so much. Something like Legotti is not boring, it's just challenging. So this is a tougher read where you're reading it and you're just not really sure what is happening and you get characters confused and they end abruptly, you know. So it's not bad. It's just different. And I think he's obviously a really talented writer. He's just on another side of the coin that I'm comfortable with. So I think it's good to challenge yourself every once in a while. This was not recommended to me by anybody. I just saw the cover and I thought it was creepy. So I looked it up, and then he's like a very sort of underdog horror writer that a lot of people haven't read. So maybe I can see why, because it's tough. It's challenging. A lot of people probably give up on his books. All right. Ghost Story. This is my top priority. If I can finish any of those, it'll be Ghost Story. I just want to have it done with. And, you know, it says it's one of the scariest books ever. I don't know about that. It takes a lot to scare me. So I've got a couple of things here. So I did Sleeping Beauties, Volume 1 of the graphic novel. I have not read the novel Sleeping Beauties. I am reading it just a few pages at a time. And I decided I would just jump over to the graphic novel because they just came out with a graphic novel a couple years back, I believe. And it's written by Rio Ewers, who I have some of his books up here. And I just thought that was cool. Another author that I like doing a adaptation of Stephen King and Owen King's book. So did the first hardcover of that, and it's really good so far. I really like it. So I think a lot of people don't like Sleeping Beauties, but yeah, I'll do hardcover volume 2 shortly. Now, one of my favorite books that I've ever read, it's like got to be in my top 10 books of all time. It's Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. Throw it up right here. Bam. Between Two Fires. Now, I'm always trying to find something that will scratch that itch. That medieval horror. I absolutely love that. I think he is like the person that sort of pioneered that and made it what it. Between Two Fires is incredible. One of the best books I've ever read. If you haven't read it, please go check it out. I would read it again right now, you know. So anyway, always trying to find something to scratch that itch. I found Mitchell Ruthie's His Black Tongue. It seemed like this was going to be the same thing. Medieval religious horror. So I did read it. It was good. Really enjoyed it. Definitely very, very similar vibes to Buehlman. Not quite there. Didn't quite hit me there as much as Between Two Fires, but I did really enjoy it, and I will continue to find things to scratch that medieval horror itch. So if you have any recommendations, please let me know. If you've read any of these, please let me know. And that's it. That's all I've got. So yeah, I would love to hear what you guys are reading for the horror season. Those 2 horror videos that I did got way more views than anything else I've ever done. So it sounds like a lot of you guys really like horror. And I went from having like 70 subscribers to over 400. So that was cool. Appreciate you guys. I would love to hear what you all are reading for the horror season. And I'll see you on the next one.